Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Inside Marketing. Really delighted today, and thanks for joining. Dan, delighted to have Dan Saunders, who's head of performance marketing at Evergreen Finance London, on the podcast with us. So, really excited to hear about your role, experience, journey into marketing. Everybody's got a different take, different industries on the podcast, different sectors and different experiences. So really excited to kind of get into that today. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us on this warm, sunny day.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem, no problem. Well, Dan, look, I know obviously we kind of spoke a little bit before, and I think you're going to have some really interesting things to share. Probably best to start off with just telling us a bit about yourself. I mean, the podcast is Inside Marketing, so maybe you could take us kind of inside your own journey into the world of marketing, where that started. Maybe you didn't start off in marketing, maybe it's always been what you've done, and just take us through how that's happened.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, really complicated background as to how I got into marketing. Started life thinking that I was going to be a doctor. Did 3 years in medical school, dropped out
Okay.
halfway through my course there. Was going to go into politics. Didn't like working in Westminster, so dropped out of that as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of fell into like a state agency after that. You just started off as
Okay.
the guy that opened the doors, showing you around the flat you were going to rent, and then just
Yeah.
build my way around that. Really luckily into yeah, sort of fell into marketing out of nowhere. Really, I
Okay.
yeah, I'm really good friends with a guy called Stephen Kenwright, who was a director of a company called Branded 3. As a digital
Okay.
marketing agency based up in Leeds, and he just
Nice.
said to me, he just asked me if I'd thought about selling something other than houses. Like, yes, every day for the last 15 years, anything other than the houses. So,
Yeah. It's crossed my mind once or twice.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, so to it, had to Google basically what SEO meant before my interview
Yeah.
was, and then yeah, the rest is history. Started off as a business development manager in digital marketing. We started attending lots of conferences and listening to people, and got to go on quite a lot of
Mm.
pitches with some really brilliant people. People that now own and operate really big agencies within the UK and
Wow.
globally. Right? So I got picked up lots of insights from them, and here we are today.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I've heard varied stories into marketing, but that has to be one of the most varied. To start off at doctor, little side passage through being in the state agency and then into marketing. But I think like definitely all give you relevant things that I'm sure you still use today. I guess that must have been quite a change of working environment, estate agency into digital marketing agency, or was it pretty similar? I guess both quite fast paced, but yeah, it must have been quite a new world, I imagine.
Yeah, it was completely. I mean, like I said, I had to Google what SEO meant. It was
Yeah.
it's 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 completely a different world from it, and I mean, I can
Mm,
only imagine what COVID did to that industry because
yeah.
it needed a change. It needed a
Yeah.
lot more digital focus going forward for it, and yeah, it was apples and oranges into it. It was sort of even to the
Yeah.
point that. I remember like the first time I went to a client meeting, I turned up like fully suited and booted, tie, shirt,
Yeah.
jacket, ready. A lot of the people on the pitch like just turned up in they weren't quite hoodies and jeans, but they weren't too far off that as well.
Yeah.
So I was
The
well
typical, yeah,
overdressed.
agency. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is a different world, isn't it? And still a state agency is still very much like that, isn't it? Very sort of traditional. I guess it's one of the pluses of marketing. It does tend to be pretty like forward thinking with regards to things like that. But yeah. So then you did agency for a few years and then obviously have kind of gone in-house. So you also have the the view of both sides of the coin. And I guess I'm not really sure. I don't have the numbers on how many people could start agency, go in house versus start in house, go in agency. I wonder if you could kind of give us your view on how marketing is different between those two.
Yeah, it's a really interesting juxtaposition because what I found from an agency side, your time is sort of scheduled for you. You know, you've got different project management
Yeah.
softwares, you've got different clients that you're working off different things. This is just from a biz dev perspective, but even then, when you under business as well, there's the project managers that have to sort of set it up for each individual team member. You've got to allocate what they've been doing at what
Mm,
time. So your time is not fluid when it comes to agency side.
yeah.
You always gonna have a number attached to you. But what I found with being in house is it's still pretty intense. You've got to be, you've got to have, everything you do has to have a number attached to it. But
Yeah.
you've got more time to go into more detail. You've got more time to test the waters and make mistakes first because if
Mm,
it's you make a mistake on your own account, oh, I can go in, I can fix
mm,
it, there's no problems there. You make a mistake on the client's account, the whole world just seems to be on fire.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah. It's like
yeah,
the
that's
point
the
around
interesting
which everything
juxtaposition.
leverages, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that kind of raises an interesting point around kind of failure. And we've talked on other episodes of the podcast about failure being really important. I mean, in any job, career, discipline, anything we're doing. Um, Often in marketing as well, we've got to test things out. I mean, do you feel that in house there's maybe more leeway for that and more kind of not necessarily openness, but do you feel that you're able to maybe experiment a bit more because you have that power, that creative license sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Everything. I mean, everything you do in house anyway, same as agency, you're accountable for, and you have to be held accountable
Yeah,
for. But if you can show
sure.
your process, your thoughts behind what you were doing. I can't think of a time where I would be reprimanded for getting something wrong. I've got things
Mm,
wrong. And much as
mm,
prefer, I'm not perfect. The occasionally is,
mm,
in any sort of sphere for these things. As long as you can show your thought process and you show, yeah, this wasn't done with malice. This should have worked,
yeah,
or this is what my thinking was. Then
yeah,
you're open to that. Well, it's a lot easier when you've
yeah,
discussed the plans. Yeah. You've gone through all these different things, but it's tough when you've got clients because you've got to not only win over your account team, you also got to win over the client, and then they've got to then win over their higher up team as well. So there's more
yeah.
stakeholders. Right? Whereas if I'm speaking to my boss and I say, "Look, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it," if he agrees with me or
Mm,
says, "Oh, I'm actually going to make some changes here." If it doesn't work out, he
mm.
says, "Actually, you know what? This is something we couldn't agree to."
Yeah, yeah. And I guess having that, I think the best marketing teams have that real openness to, even though something sort of on paper may have failed, may have not turned out as well as we thought it would. I mean, it's still a success in some way because it's taught us something. And the greatest sometimes success is learning something about our audience or our offering or something like that. So, I think it's about having a flexible category for what is success, what does success look like. But yeah, I can understand that's different to an in-house agency. I guess in terms of then your work at the moment, in-house, obviously you're kind of heading up a department. What, like in the last 12 months, have you really focused on? And when I ask that, it can be anything to do with like a new channel or just like a new kind of mantra that you've had. What's been like top of the to-do list for you and your team this last year?
Yes, I mean, from my perspective, because I work in finance now, we've had quite a few
Mm,
bits of legislation come through that we want to make sure that we're on top on.
right.
So not just from a regulatory perspective, but also from a customer first standpoint. And that's what all the regulations have been putting for, is putting our customers first, which is a
Yeah.
tactic from my e-commerce days, I've always been a champion of, and something that I think is a really, really anyone listening. I mean, as a takeaway, that should be job one, put your customer first. You've got
Yeah.
to think of,
Yeah.
right, why am I doing this? Why am I writing this content? Why am I doing this particular type of outreach? Everything's got to
Mm,
be customer first. How would your customer react to this? And the key points around it is knowing who your customer is, having all that data to say, I know my customer is here, 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 here. They're using this device, this time of day.
yeah.
They act in this sort of way. They'll react to this sort of thing in this specific manner. I use a lot of vague and incongruities there, but having that data to feed the X, Y, and Z of it is very,
Yeah.
very crucial. And if you don't have that anyway, you're going to struggle. That's why, touch wood, my team have done really, really well on the back of these legislative changes, and it's why we're
Okay,
continuing to
yeah.
do well, just with that mantra of
No, that sounds good.
we'll put the customer first.
And that is such a common challenge, isn't it? Because I mean, I think people a very often kind of misstep is feeling like we know who our customer is, but then kind of making judgments without the data to back it. So, what would your advice be to somebody who's, trying to start up a bit of a marketing function, or maybe you in your earlier days when actually pretty mystified about who the audience is. Like, what have we got to do? What steps do we take there to understand that better?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of asking about what data we need, because that's the key element. Because a
Yeah.
lot of we're in such a data heavy world at the moment in time. We can get data from anything at any points,
Mm,
to the point that sometimes in fact we've had GDPR legislation that's come in to sort of restrain how much we can and can't do with data.
mm,
So we're in an absolute age of data, and it's a case of right, okay, well, where do I start with that? And then that leads to things like option paralysis. So what well, the data shows this, but it also shows that. But what if we do this and there's that? And then
yeah.
you end up being just lost in this eternal loop of, oh, what
Mm,
if, but that and this and the other, etc., etc. And one of the key elements that I would say, and the advice that I'd give to somebody, is be decisive and take action. Because going back to what we were talking
mm,
about before, you are going to make mistakes, and it's better to make mistakes earlier on in your career where you've possibly got somebody over watching you or double checking your work. Um,
yeah.
I suppose to if I get anything wrong and I break the entirety of the CRM, that's that's a big issue. With a junior exec who doesn't have that sort of power makes the same mistake, it can be easily
Yeah.
rectified because they've got safeguards in place. The problems occur when you take the safeguards off. So
Yeah,
don't
I'm
be afraid
sure.
to make mistakes. I think we've alluded to that really well.
Mm,
I think it definitely is something in your other episodes as well. I've seen that as well. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and then ask the
mm,
questions. What is relevant data? People will say, "Oh, I need names, addresses, phone numbers." Well, why do you need uh, the names? Why do you need their addresses? Why do you
yeah.
need that phone number? Are you ever going to contact
Mm,
them? If you're going to contact them on the phone, then yes, fine, you need their phone number. But if you're not, well, scrap that, because people are becoming a lot more acutely aware of how much their data is
yeah.
worth. And if you're asking for
100%.
needless things on the data entry form, yeah, if you're asking for needless things, like, oh, I don't actually need a phone number, or I'm never going to speak to them on email,
Yeah.
then don't ask for it.
Yeah.
You'll improve your conversion, you'll have better customer relationships, and you'll actually get down to the data that you need.
Yeah, 100%. And we're just creating another barrier to entry, really, there, aren't we? I mean, just slowing down the process, another step in the form or in another field they've got to fill it, and there's another potential for them to just give up and go somewhere else. So, yeah, I mean, those things can't be underestimated. I think how important they are. But yeah, I think just really being careful about the data that you collect is so important. And I think, yeah, you mentioned that option paralysis. I often use the term paralysis from analysis. That's a real killer, I think, in marketing, because it is overwhelming. There is really too much data. Also, the question around kind of trustworthiness of data and which data set and which bit of information should we trust over others, and that's confusing. So I like the directness of just kind of making a decision and going with it. You'll at least learn something, as long as you've got the rationale, as you said. You'll learn something, and at best it might go really well. So yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess you manage a team, right? So you've got kind of quite a large team there at Evergreen Finance, and you're focusing on them not being afraid of making mistakes, things like that. What other kind of culture things do you try and cultivate in that marketing team that you feel like positively contributes?
So I'm in a really weird position where I never assumed I'd become a manager of anything. I've kind of been the guy where you point in the right direction, just leave me to it. That's one of the things that Stephen
Yeah,
Conroy always said he loved about me. He's like, I never needed to know where Dan was because I knew he'd be out making me money. So, and that's
yeah,
always been the mantra that I've had. Point me in the right direction and go. One of the things that with having the team that I've tried to install in is self not not so much self-learning, but being able to find the answers for yourself. Because
Yeah.
I mean, as we discussed, my road to marketing is was obscure at best. And I had to
Mm,
find the answers out for myself through asking people, through trial and error, through just
mm,
research. So instead of me constantly being over people's shoulders and look and saying, right, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? It's right, okay. What's our bigger task? What do we want to get done? Right, okay. Can you do this? Um,
mm.
and then portioning it out to them and giving them that
Yeah.
freedom to go out there and make the mistakes if they made mistakes, they made mistakes. If not, they
Mm,
can ask me questions. But if instead of them saying, Dan, can you help me with this? Dan, can you help me with that? It's a case
yeah.
of pointing in the right direction. It's like, cool, okay. Have you looked at this piece of information? Have you looked into this? Or have you seen that? Or have you spoken to this person
Mm,
about it? Letting them be able to find the answers for themselves. So when they get to the point where they're managing a team, that they have the answers themselves because they know the
yes.
questions that they had. So there's
Mm.
always
Because they've
there's
learned
always
through
a little
doing, they haven't. Yeah.
exactly exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always the
Yeah.
case
It's
of
really interesting.
I yeah. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. There's always a case of I've got certain KPIs I've got from my CEO, and therefore I have to pass those KPIs on to my team. So there are certain
Mm.
elements where I need you to do this because I just don't have the time to do it. There is always going to be that element, but when you sort of move up in the world, that's the joys that you have. I get a piece of I get
Mm.
a 50,000 page document from our CEO because he's the CEO and he has got time to read it.
Yeah,
I
sure.
then pass that down to a junior exec, and then they'll then listen it through. So it's not always that free sort of learning and trial and error expert, but that I'd say it's probably about 90% of the monument style that I
Yeah.
implement. Is a case of right, okay, this is what we've got to do. You can do that. I'll do this. If you've got any questions, let me know, and I'll do my thing. And then just
Mm.
having regular check-ins, just make sure one, work's going all right, but two, also like mentally, how are they coping? And
Yeah.
is the work too much? Are they learning
Yeah.
okay? It still needs regular check-ins, but not sort of over your shoulders, like how are you doing? Like every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a case of right,
Yeah.
having that allotted sort of time for them just to talk and to let them talk is a key
Yeah.
element for me as well.
Yeah, you're a human. Obviously, I'm concerned about the task, and I want to make sure that progress is happening. But also, how are you? Because I think, particularly with marketing, that maybe in other jobs, I feel like I always say particularly in marketing, but it's because we work in marketing. I don't know really. I can't say about anything else, but I do feel that it is very important because of the amount of creativity that we need to, really be good and really be looking after yourself and feeling like you come with ideas and a fresh mind. We're not doing sort of a monotonous task, like we're reliant on being able to pull and draw quite a bit from our creative imagination. So for that, we've got to be doing good for ourselves as well. And I think, yeah, that's I think the most productive marketing teams are the ones that arguably have the best ideas. And how do you have ideas? Well, do things that top up the brain, give you inspiration. So that all sounds really positive. And ultimately, that's how most people, I'd say, love to learn, love to do, have ownership over something. And like you say, that reinforces them actually learning something rather than sort of holding it in their mind for a really short period of time and then sort of discarding it for the next mini task and not having any context around what the impact of that task is, I think. And I think that can be really difficult for junior marketers as well, to just be kind of given something that, and they can't see how that connects to the wider whole, because how are they then learning how a strategy works? They're just doing small bits and bobs here and there, but with no idea of what impact that's generating. So it sounds like you really give the ownership there to feel like an important part of the puzzle, I suppose.
I
Yeah.
mean, I take the same
Yeah, it's really
attitude
good.
that I had when especially when we were in your agency life as well. When you got to be thinking like, what are the client's end goals from that? If you don't have eyes
Yeah.
on the client's end goals, then you're just like you said, you're that microscopic part that you don't see the bigger picture. If you can see the bigger
Mm,
picture for a client, you can say, well, actually, well, if we do this, we do this, because anyone can optimize a task, but if the task is specifically suited to the bigger picture of that, and you're saying, oh, we could do this, we could do
mm,
this, that would take you away from the bigger picture. But if you have eyes on it
Yeah.
all, then like it's exactly as you said. You work towards that bigger picture, and we're
Yeah.
all pointing in the same direction.
Yeah. Oh, it's so, yeah, really interesting, isn't it? And I guess that I guess what's difficult in a small team is that um, I think it's undeniable that you need those both things. As you say, you need somebody who's kind of sat at the top and overseeing everything and ooh, just come a little bit more this way, just come a little bit more this way. And then there's also people who are fantastic at what they do, driving the engine. And I think in a smaller marketing team, it can be difficult because you lose that former part. And as much as a senior marketing person may have, and I'm not talking about in your business, but sort of in teams of one or two, that's a struggle because I think that senior marketing person kind of gets dragged into the implementation and into the social media and all the day to day. And then it's really hard to keep that oversight. So I guess you have to hold that barrier where you need to continue to have that oversight. Oh, dear, I've lost the lights. Let me just turn them on. um, so yeah, do you find that a struggle even in a team of your size to kind of keep that barrier? Do you still sometimes feel yourself being dragged into the implementation and kind of, I guess you have to consciously then say, I'm going to give that to you and I'm going to let you run that.
Yeah, and there's times when you just have to physically let go. So, I mean, we've
Yeah,
just gone through a whole revised process where we know that actually our users, there are more users of our users are on TikTok than they are on Meta. And
yeah,
I know nothing about TikTok. I've specifically avoided it in my because no, everything that people would see from me would just be either basketball or my kids related or food related. So there's enough
yeah,
of that in the world, so you don't
mm,
need to say come with me. Um, but because I don't understand any of these things, it was easier for me to say, actually, you know what, you hear this up, you understand it a lot better than I do.
yeah,
I'm going to stick my hands off this. But like you said, well, you've still got those smaller teams, and we're not a massive team, but we're still there's still points where I will have to do the implementation for these different elements, whether it's PPC campaign or there's a piece of
yeah,
content that needs to actually upload to the CMS. There's different elements where I have a skill set and I can do it quicker. Whereas I can
mm,
say, actually, you know what, my team can focus on this because they've got that
yeah,
expertise on that. Ideally, in case
yeah,
of I just hand over everything to everybody, and then I just sort of look at the strategy going forward and keep, like you said, keep everybody sort of in that line. But I can't think in this day and age where there'd be a role where you get completely away from any sort
yeah,
of implementation. You've got to have hands on with the strategy still, but
mm,
also being able to step back at the same time. So you
mm.
need to be someone who can get their hands dirty if needs be, but also somebody that's willing to step back and say, actually, you know what, you guys have got this.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And I think if you do have someone that's too detached, that then becomes a problem, like you say, because the task that you're setting, you're not really sure how to execute them yourselves. And obviously, there's a place for that. There's a place for everyone having their own skill sets. But I think it's good to stay close enough to be able to understand how to do it if you were to, and just to give yourself familiarity with what your team have on their plate and things like that. But yeah, definitely having the two sides is important. Yeah, it's very flexible, isn't it? It has to be fluid. It's like every day you might find a different level of involvement on each side. And that's just the agility that's required, I guess, in the role. But yeah, really interesting. I guess in terms of then speaking maybe less positively or more kind of skeptically, what's been a bit of a challenge for you? And maybe you can go into as much detail as you want to, either in kind of the finance sector or in your own kind of department or team, or just generally as a marketer, like what have you struggled with and maybe you're still trying to kind of overcome it, or you've implemented something that hopefully seems to be working, like what's been big for you these last few months?
The bit that I mean, from the negative side, the biggest thing is sort of like fluctuations within.
Mm,
I imagine everyone's having to deal with this no matter what industry they're in. There's always peaks and
mm,
troughs within different elements, but it's getting less and less easy to measure when those peaks and troughs are going to be. It used to be from an e-commerce perspective, it used to be say, right, well, we know that uh, Christmas time is going to be a really, really busy
Yeah.
time for us. But then we have, oh, well, let's have the introduction of Black Friday, and then Prime, and then Amazon introduced Prime Day. And then there's all
Yeah.
these different things that then get associated. And there's just the addition of three extra events there for you. So then Prime Day suddenly becomes 2 days, suddenly becomes 3 days, suddenly becomes a week. The
Yeah.
that's just the e-commerce sphere as well. I mean, from a obviously from a finance perspective, we've also got different factors in case of, we've just had the UK elections. How's the market reacted to that? We've just seen the results of the French elections. How's the market going to react to that?
Yeah.
And then we've also got the US elections at the end of the year as well. So there's a lot of hesitancy, get my words out, uh, in the market, but there's also a lot of growth. And it's a case of, well, is there natural growth? Are we
Mm.
seeing more people out and about buying things at the moment in time because the England team are doing well, or are we
Yeah.
seeing that people are spending more money online because the weather's awful? The fluctuations are just
Yeah.
almost incomparable in some elements, and that has been the really difficult element because, as going back to what we were saying before, you can plan a marketing campaign to the nth degree, but there's always going to be something that's going to be holding you back. It's never going to be the perfect time, but going back to what we said right at the start, it's better to fail and learn.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And it's all planning, no doing then. If we just sit there and think, well, it could be this, well, it could be this, well, maybe we should just think about this, and then your point about being decisive really comes in. It's so tough, all of those things layered on top of each other, isn't it? All the potential seasonal, political, economical factors that impact things, because how do we unpick that? And what we're really trying to do is draw insights. It would be great if we could know exactly what it was that was causing that increase in the curve. Um, we don't, or we can make a guess, but that doesn't, we don't like that because we like finite, we like data, we like knowing the absolute truth. So it can be very difficult. But and I don't know. I wonder with you and because of the impact of those fluctuations being in finance and everything, how does it sometimes feel like, "Ugh, I don't want to plan everything anymore around what could potentially be coming up or what could be a reaction to something that's happening in the world. I kind of just want to run our own agenda." So I imagine there's like a tussle between those two, is there?
That is the big thing, and that's the killer point. You've got to, if your CEO says
Yeah,
we need 50% growth by the end of the year, that is what's happening. There's no ifs, no buts, no babies. You've got to plan
yeah,
for that. So for me, it's simple, step by step, month by month, break down, right, what does that look like? What does that growth look like here, here, here,
yeah.
here? Right, okay, that'll be that. What do I need from an SEO channel? What do I need from a PPC channel? What do I need from affiliates, etc., etc., etc. Breaking down
Mm,
and planning what it looks like in an ideal world, because, like,
hmm.
as we said, it's never had to be ideal. But then on the other side of things, well, you're gonna have times where it's not, well, not over ideal, but you're gonna come in peaks and troughs. So if you lose something out
Yeah,
1 month, can you pick it back up in the next? And it's just monitoring
yeah.
those fluctuations well and saying, right, okay, we're on top of that. This is how we do it, and then building
Mm,
around that and making sure that we stick with it as well.
yeah. Yeah, like charting your progress in a short term way to reach a long term goal. I guess that's good. And then you're kind of at those checkpoints, understanding what's worked, how have we got to that number if we have, or why have we fallen short if we have, and what are we going to change next month about it. I think that's essential. I think there's still quite a lot of marketing teams or marketing individuals that potentially don't have that locked down enough. And I completely understand that that's due to lack of time or everything that we've spoken about already and all the different priorities that there are to cover off. But I think if you're not sitting down, monthly and really just blocking out the noise and looking at the cold hard numbers and try and just understanding what they're saying, you're really missing a point because Otherwise, you're just going off in a path and something's down there not really performing and you're missing it. And that's where it becomes a bit dangerous. So, yeah, I think do you do that internally? Do you make a point either just by yourself or with your team? Do you kind of go through the reports and make that kind of central to everything?
Yeah, definitely. And it is always worth mentioning, if we didn't perform in one channel, why didn't we perform? If we overperformed, why did we always
Yeah,
having that caveat and data with it, because that'll be the
mm,
bottom line. Why didn't you hit these numbers? And it's a case of, well, this is why we didn't do it. However, we've now learned, we've prepared, and we know what to do next time this happens, and this is what we're going to do to rectify
yeah,
it for next month as well, because it's all about that balance. If you don't get that balance right, then you are just going to lose. It would be it's easy to get lost in this. Oh, but what about this? What about that? Like we said before, that option paralysis. If we can then say,
yeah,
right, we've learned from this. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to fix it. Then I've never met a CEO that has turned that down. Yes, sometimes if you could have seen something happening a mile away and you've not done anything still because you've said that's not my job, that to me is when there's an issue. If you've
mm,
seen a problem coming and you've not told anybody, then you know what? Then that's on you because if you're expecting other people to do these things, you also need to hold yourself accountable for this element as well. For if you've seen
yeah,
something that somebody hasn't, don't just sit on it. Help the team. If you're doing that and
yeah, of
it's a case
course.
of not my problem, then well, you just made it your problem going forward. So
Yeah,
having that
absolutely.
really
Yeah.
intrinsic team mentality is the way forward, and
Mm,
that's where myself and my team get on really
mm,
well with that because we've all got such different perspectives. We all see these different elements, and we can say, "Oh, actually, this is
yeah,
something we need to think about." Right, cool. Let's think about that. Let's plan for that. But then also not being bogged
yeah,
down too much in it. It's like, "Okay, you write a risk report on that. Tell me what we can do to fix it, and then uh, team person B, they see something else, right, cool, write me a risk report, tell me what I need to do to fix it, we'll then come back together and then filter through that and then feed it back to the CEO who ultimately would just care about the numbers in the end.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the phrase that's popping into my head is that as marketeers, we have to be the ultimate brand champions or brand guardians. And it sounds like that's exactly what your team are. Even if they spot something, they'll raise it because they know that somewhere in the team that's going to make an impact or be a useful bit of information. And if we're a marketing team that's not doing that and we're all sort of in a house that we're all in different rooms and the doors are closed, we're not passing information, so much we're missing out on. But I think that can be really common as well, where people are working maybe with like disjointed external resource, or like different departments just don't have good communication between each other, and there's such a gold mine there of data and insights that's just been missed. So that sounds like a really good kind of roundtable culture you've got going now with your team, whereby yeah, they'll raise something. And I think raising the flag is just the most important thing. There will be someone for whom that's their expertise, so they'll take it off you, but it's really important, if you spot it, you raise it. So yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, the dynamic of a successful marketing team. What are the ingredients? But it sounds like things are going very, very well for you. So yeah, very like positive culture. I wonder, we've not too much time left. I also wanted to talk to you just about kind of the next 12 months and what's coming over the horizon for you. Whether that's challenges that you're anticipating or just new ideas that you're going to kind of try and implement and things you're looking to build. What's on the list?
So for me, there's the next big challenge because I've always dealt with everything digital marketing. It's always been SEO, it's been PPC, it's been
Mm,
CRM, etc., etc. The next big step for me is mastering the out of home experiences. So,
okay.
are we looking into digital
Hmm.
advertising? Are we going to be looking into radio, even TV advertising? All things that I've never dealt with, not exclusively, within a role
Yeah.
before. So it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be taking on that challenge of getting people on that actually,
Mm,
we deal with this day in, day out. So for me to say, right, okay, here's our wider picture. Does that fit in to what we're doing now? Yes, no, cool, right, that's fine. Then let's go ahead with that as well. So
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the next
absolutely.
12 months for me. So making sure that um I'm making sure that myself and my team are uncomfortable because we are learning these different elements. But if you
Yeah.
sort of pigeonhole itself down one of these elements, then that's potentially a
Mm,
problem because budgets for marketing are always going to be under scrutiny from any department. If you end up losing one element,
mm,
then that could negatively impact everything. So it's better, in from a marketing standpoint, from my perspective, it's better to know all these different elements because there's always got to be the money coming to the business. That's rule one. You've
yeah.
always got to be generating more revenue.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that feeling of be like we should be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's what we should be as marketers, or even if we're scared of something, that's probably not a bad sign. It's something that's a new area that we haven't stepped into. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't. And actually, if we don't test, then we're holding ourselves back. So yeah, I mean that means we're going to see you everywhere. So we're all going to keep an eye out. So seeing you, yeah, even more and more and more. So yeah, that sounds very exciting. And like you say, a whole new kind of world there of marketing. But I imagine with the foundation that you've built and the digital presence now, that's going to be really fun to roll out, I suppose. So yeah, whole different thing, really, isn't it, in terms of tracking and attribution and things like that. But very exciting to get into. Well, we wish you all the best with that, Dan, and your team. I'm going to probably end there. We've kind of come to the end of the time. It honestly, it's been so interesting hearing about your team and your work in the business, and I guess how you're cultivating that real positive growth and that momentum. And I think there's a lot of insights there to be taken for anybody who's starting out in marketing, running a team themselves, or anybody maybe in your position at the beginning who's kind of segueing into marketing, even though if that wasn't the thing that they thought they'd be in maybe a few years ago. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and hopefully everyone finds that really useful. And yeah, I wish you kind of all the best. Enjoy the rest of the sunshine and the match on Sunday.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really
Thanks,
appreciate you coming
Dan.
on, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on.